Hey, I just want to thank everyone for Meant to Be Casual, meant to really be a celebration of a banner year for Korean television, Korean cinema, and Korean culture. I mean, all we really have to do is go and watch the throngs of fans who went to 4 sold-out BTS concerts. Korean barbecue restaurants were inundated with fans from around the world. So I think what we've seen this year is the culmination of the Korean marketplace being turbocharged and being an incredibly exportable cultural thing, right? So I think this year has blown away critics, pundits, journalists. We've seen Squid Game, and of course we're all talking about Squid Game, but Squid Game with nearly 2 billion hours viewed globally. I think by this point it's probably more than that because that was in the first 28 days. Something is happening here, and I think it's important for all of us to examine it because A, it will give us an ability to pinpoint and find content that will work again just like a Squid Game, or just like a Crash Landing on You, or just like a hashtag Alive. It'll help producers figure out what is working here in the US and internationally, what might not, what might feel like a throwback to Korean TV and film of 5 years ago versus today, where we have Minari, The Odd Family, Zombies for Sale, a big movie that I just saw, which is an incredibly funny zombie movie. So I think it's important to look at this past year to figure out what we're doing right, where we're going, what the next Masked Singer is, what the next I Can See Your Voice is, because I think that will really, really help producers and audiences and broadcasters around the world. So this has been such an unexpectedly exciting year. I think the last time we spoke, we thought Parasite and Masked Singer were the pinnacle. It wouldn't get any better than that. And then all of a sudden, Halloween comes along and you turn on TV and you have men wearing orange and green colored jumpsuits, little dolls shooting out at contestants. And globally on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, people are imitating it. It's a cultural touchstone. And we find ourselves in a world where Korean content is what everyone wants, what everyone is trying to emulate, what every other country is trying to figure out how it works. So what's happened this year, I think, is a testament to how Korean TV and cinema has shifted more toward what is working in the UK, the US, Germany, Netherlands, where storylines are one genre. And I think that has been proven with Squid Game, even Crash Landing on You, My Name. All of these titles seem to be following more of a US and UK and Western approach, which is not multi-themed, but one theme. And I think producers can look at that model and listen, of course, I'll be proven wrong because next month there'll be a multi-theme show that ends up being bigger than Squid Game. We don't know, but what we know is there are ways of producing TV and tropes and styles of production that Western audiences are more accustomed to. And as Korean producers and broadcasters get closer to that age-old model, that seems to be the sweet spot that's really attracting viewers. So look at hashtag Alive or Uncanny Counter, Hotel Del Luna even, which God knows is an incredibly wacky idea, but it stays thematically very, very singularly. And I think that works, where you find rom-com mixed with supernatural, mixed with murder. It's starting to get a little bit uncomfortable for Western audiences. And I think as we get closer to that one narrative, that approach, which seems to be where there's writers' rooms and a real auteur approach, that's where things really seem to be speaking to global audiences who have been spoon-fed American TV, The Big Bang Theories, Hawaii Five-0 and NCIS, which have that one storyline. So I think the single genre approach is one that's really resonating. Personally, I think the one genre approach that Korean productions have been getting closer to has been really helping Western audiences adapt their tastes. And I think the most important thing is finding that midpoint where Korean audiences are enjoying the shows and international and US audiences are enjoying the show. And I think getting closer to that one genre, which is such a staple of Western cinema, that's been sort of that happy medium that seems to be working for both Korean audiences and international/American audiences, North American audiences. I think that works well. And speaking to Koreans back home in Seoul, I think there has been that desire to see shows even made in Korea that resemble Western shows. I grew up in Canada. I grew up in French Canada, Montreal. So I have that outside looking in. And I think as even the shows from my home country have gotten closer to American style shows, you can see that there's just that shorthand is there. It's easier for audiences to pick up the remote and watch, and I think that's really been helping turbocharge Korean formats globally. And you see it on Viki, and it's not just on HBO Max, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon. You see it now on Viki, which is a much more an audience that is much more accustomed to watching the sort of classic K-dramas and K-variety shows. But even those shows that are one genre seem to be outperforming. This has been such an incredible year, and a lot of my job is looking for those jewels, those Korean and international unscripted formats that are resonating back home. It's been a hard year too, so the currency of Korean studios has been those big singing competitions. The everything from I Can See Your Voice to as we said, Masked Singer. Those shows weren't being produced in the same numbers because of COVID that they had been in the past. But we're seeing shows from CJ and from JTBC, big dance competition formats that have been doing incredibly well. This year, Island, of course, and sort of last year and this year, Island shocked audiences, created yet another K-pop band, a boy band that's doing incredibly well. So I think shows like Island, I'm a big fan of. Sixth Sense is a show from CJE&M that I love. Sixth Sense is such a clever format, and I think they figured out a way to create a hit show where you didn't need a big audience like I Can See Your Voice or Masked Singer or other big competition shows. And I think that format is one that's just so unique, where you try to fool people into thinking a environment is actually a real environment. And I think what I love about how CJE&M pivoted with that format, with Sixth Sense, is they looked at an audience that had been stuck at home, unfamiliar with going to restaurants and going on trips, and it's taking those people outside of their home, seeing what they're like outside of their element. How, are they still attuned to what life is like outside of the home? And I think that pivot during COVID was very, very clever. That was really exciting to me. I think this COVID pivot, especially in Korea, where big musical singing competition shows were very hard to produce, which had a trickle effect. We're not seeing as many of those here in the US, but then other shows came out. So how do you take the excitement of a competition series and take it to the streets? So Street Fighting Dancer, that great a dance competition series is one that I think really addressed how do we satisfy an audience who wants to see a big primetime shiny floor competition series, but take it outside of the studio. So that's been a big hit show. I think getting into the studio more, of course, the great Yoon's Kitchen, which has been on forever, satisfied people who are probably feeling claustrophobic at home, right? We saw Love Catcher, which we loved, and then we can't forget what is now sweeping the globe, which is Singles Inferno, which is obviously a nod to our show, The Bachelor, Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise, Love Island, but done so well. And I think audiences globally needed the levity. They needed to leave their homes. They needed to travel to somewhere exotic. Of course, Heart Signal is still, interesting people both in Korea. It's a big hit in China. It's been a really interesting year for reality. I'm excited with how content has left the studio this year and really is captivating audiences. something's happening. I think both sides are getting closer. I think Korean shows are adopting more Western techniques and conventions, and I think American audiences are getting used to Korean conventions via streamers that are showing the original series. So I think they're finding this midpoint, and I think that's working where you don't have to do as much development as you did in the past. There's not so many changes that you would normally see. And I think there's this really interesting compromise going on where tastes are now converging and the shows are much more pure to their original intention. That I really love. And I think that's partly because of global streamers. That's partly because audiences are now used to seeing things that they wouldn't normally see. I think, even the way panels are in US shows now and judging panels, that sort of classic Korean convention of having comedians. I think that you're seeing that much more here, and I think cultures are just starting to meld in a very interesting way, and I think shows are looking much more pure to their original. It's very interesting because in a post-Squid Game landscape, everyone is asking, how do we come up with the next Masked Singer or Squid Game as producers in Korea, producers in America, and I think there's a lot going on. So we're already seeing reality shows that are inspired by Squid Game. So we just saw NBC's Bloody House, which is an escape room slash Squid Game. So you're seeing quite a bit of that, right? So that happens often after a big scripted hit. You'll find it happen even with Parasite. We're talking about reality shows, but what is the reality version of Squid Game? So you always hear that, and every network is being pitched that. But I think it's important to look at trends and what's really working. And I think sticking to the single theme for drama is very helpful. But looking at things like what has worked well this year, supernatural and horror is working incredibly well. It works globally. So absolutely on the drama side, I think there's going to be even more supernatural. The Uncanny Counters, I think, are a perfect example of a show like that. I think there's themes that you normally wouldn't see. There's a lot more in gender, right? And male versus female stereotypes. You're seeing much more female empowerment in Korean TV. And so I think it's really keeping your ear open to what's going on. And I guarantee, because of what's happening with questions about race and ethnicity, you're going to see shows that explore those issues for sure. I mean, there's other really big hot button issues that I think will resonate here because they're resonating in Korea. So bullying, you see a lot of bullying now. We saw shows about hazing in the military, things that are really talked about, both in the US and in Korea and globally. I think DP is an interesting example of a show that was probably much buzzier in countries where there is a draft, there's mandatory conscription. And from what I understand, in places like Israel, where you have mandatory conscription, and obviously in Korea, these were much more hot button topics. But I know people here, the military is such an important part of America. I think it resonated. I don't think it resonated in quite the same way where it was a social big issue here. I think it would have several years ago. But I think elements of the show, like hazing, like being part of the military and the police, I think that's where American audiences gleaned storylines that really resonated for them. Producers should look at what's trending. What are those big hot button topics in the newspaper, on Instagram, on TikTok? What are people complaining about? What are big issues like that? What are those subjects that were taboo a few years ago in Korea that aren't now? So gender roles, I'm seeing much more in the very delicate way that LGBTQ issues are being handled in Korea with boy love and all that. You're seeing that in a lot of storylines. The globe is open for everyone because of all these streamers. We all have access to content from around the world, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, streamers. We're all seeing how the LGBTQ community is depicted in even reality shows like Queer Eye. So I think viewers in Korea probably felt, and networks felt like it was time to represent characters from the LGBT community in a very accurate way. So I think Itaewon Class had a very inspiring LGBTQ character, and I think in the past that just wouldn't have been on a big network show in Korea. So I think giving equal time to that character in Itaewon Class was really defining. And I think the more you see that, the more you'll see change both overseas and in Korea. And I think those themes are very important to be in shows, not only from a practical commercial point of view. People want to see themselves. They want to know that other people are talking about these issues. So you're immediately attracted to it, but also it will affect change. We're very active in the Korean space. My division, Warner Brothers International TV Production, produces Masked Singer in many territories. We produce I Can See Your Voice in many territories. I know CJE&M and other Korean broadcasters and producers test out their ideas in other Asian markets, and we're looking at a lot of those markets as well. You know, I'm a big fan of Format East and what they're doing with new formats, and I love what Something Special is doing as well. I love the fact that it's no longer only networks that are producing content. So you have Something Special, a real indie in a very American way, coming up with very sellable, compelling formats. And we don't look at we just want great ideas. We want the next big Ellen's Game of Games. We want the next Bachelor. We want the next Masked Singer, and we're finding a lot of that in great incubators like Format East and Something Special, and working with Korean networks with their initiatives, you know, with their script writing competitions, and we're talking to them about getting involved in a very early stage. So we're looking for diverse stories, for stories that tell a strong, diverse tale. We're looking for reality shows that have a lot of play along. We love game. We're looking for more game shows. So I'm looking forward to 2022. Hopefully COVID will improve, and there'll be more studio shows and more game shows and more musical shows. And you know, we just want great ideas, and we're finding a lot of those stories coming from Korea, and we're excited for the next year.